Hello, America. I have been many places, the shiny surface of the sun, and I've met Jesus Christ and bested Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in battle. And now I come before you, my fellow Americans, in order to defeat this evil, evil woman who is, quite frankly, not very good, no good at all. She's probably worse than Jeb Bush, if I'm being honest.
All right. So we got something a little bit different for y'all today. Got with me here Mr. Arcadia, and we're gonna be talking some politics, which we've touched on before in various videos on the channel, but this is the first time we're like
Directly talking about it.
directly addressing it and all that. With everything that's happened with the debate recently, and then some of the rather wild events that have happened since the debate. We have a lot to dive into, and
there is no way we are not. This video is not that we're monetized anyways, but if we were, we'd be get sent to like the demonetized jail. It probably.
Oh yeah, if not like shadow banned or whatever. Hopefully not, but if that happens, I'll put this up on Rumble as well, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I watched a little bit of the debate, and then I just kind of listened to some radio shows during the week, and checked out the reactions online and stuff. And Arcadia over here, he went back and watched the whole thing, took some notes. So I'm gonna let him lead the discussion.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was kind of like I didn't watch it because I was like working when it was happening initially. I mean, I guess I could have listened to it while I was at work with how I have things set up, but there's no way I would have. Anyways, yeah. So I read some like initial reactions first, and then I was discussing things with Immortalix here, and kind of go take it from the top here. We have a document of things. Not like going from like the beginning to the end of the debate. I mean, kind of, but they do it is kind of ordered in kind of in the order of how they were like discussing the issues. So one of the first things that Kamala tried to do is she tried to tie Trump to Project 2025, and over like the course of the general debate, like the whole thing, Trump is constantly like he's just like defending himself. He's like correcting. Has to start things off with corrections before he goes into says his statements about certain policies and his solutions to some of the problems that we've been seeing get much worse like in the last 4 years, and in some new issues, very vile happenings that Trump brought up. That I mean, I've heard some stuff about, but I didn't know that it was this bad. It was like this some of the happenings with like some of these migrants in Ohio. Yeah, and the thing is, like the whole Project 2025 thing, Trump.
So before we get into that,
Yeah.
I admittedly never really looked into that whole thing because I know like pretty soon after that talking point kind of popped off, Trump was like, I don't even know what that is. Like,
Yeah. So if I had to describe, I mean, I'll admit, I haven't fully looked at all their points. It's basically like a list of points that it's mostly like conservative, well, Republican talking points. I don't want to necessarily say conservative because you have some people who will be like certain people will be on YouTube and other spaces online, kind of act like they aren't really conserving anything. But essentially, it's if I had to describe it, it's what's the best way to put this? It would probably be like people want to take things back to the 50s, not like necessarily like the full 50s, like essentially they want the government to be the federal government to be small, like not have its fingers in everything.
Yeah.
In the same way like Roe v. Wade had its fingers in
the whole country.
In the whole country just because of some ruling in the 70s. They want things to go back to that, where there's actually like reason for people to move to different states, which kind of the whole point of the United States. One of the unique things is that hey, you don't like that you can't do this or that in one state. Hey, go to the next one. They might be a little more lenient about that or whatever. So yeah, so Project 2025 is it's a lot of it is stuff like they want to have like like the Bible back in school and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
it just like a lot of like if you've grown up in like conservative churches in America, you probably have heard a lot of these talking points in like sermons, or someone like throws in like a small little thing in like their Sunday school lesson, whatever. You know, it's stuff like that. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be like we really both need to like look at it like to get like an idea, but
Yeah.
Trump is not necessarily like trying to do that.
Yeah. And the other thing is like I said, I haven't looked into it, but all I ever hear about it is people on the left making like this huge deal out of it as if it's some like ultra, super dangerous conspiracy. And, while I might disagree with something like, having the Bible in every level of schooling or whatever, it's not like it doesn't sound that, terrible to me especially when you compare it to some of their agendas, like the World Economic Foundation,
Go
like
own nothing and be happy.
like they had their own like number agenda thing for that too.
Yeah, Agenda
And
2030.
yeah, and that's like the real conspiracy, because that's one, it's global, and two, it's like let's take choice out of everyone's life and force them to do, be, act, live these certain ways. And it's like that's the level that like leftists are trying to put this 2025 thing on. And it's nowhere near that serious from like the things people are criticizing it for.
Yeah, I mean, this general thing I would say about Trump and like these last like 8 well, I guess it's been 9 years, because in 2015 was when he first showed up on the scene with the him announcing um uh whatever I mean, because I know this isn't like his first time announcing to run for president. Obviously, he tried a few times like in the 2000s and stuff,
Yeah.
from what I recall. But he a lot of people have this like weird thing, like he's literally Hitler. He's like gonna he's like gonna be this tyrant. He's gonna make himself God, or with the first assassination attempt. There's certain people, and I would know this because there was someone in my life that I think I've told you about before. I haven't specifically said who it was that said this, but this person, they said that they think Trump is the Antichrist because
Oh
she
yeah.
didn't. They didn't say specifically like this, but I've heard certain people be like, oh, because the assassination attempt is like he got like it wasn't directly on the head and it didn't kill him,
Yeah.
but it seemed like it did. And what what people are referring to is in the book of the Revelation, which is already kind of a crazy book as it is, because people have different interpretations. Like either it's a vision of times to come, or it's just like a big giant allegory for Nero persecuting Christians back then. Nero and I think Tiberius. It's been a while, but I definitely Nero for sure. And what happened was, what it says is that the Antichrist, he'll get like a wound on his head and it'll seem like he died, but then he'll get back up like miraculously, it seems.
Wow.
And then you have all this stuff going on with like that, with them trying to get rid of cash or turn things fully digital.
Yeah.
And tie your money to like basically like a social credit score, basically. Like I mean, it's not just China. I remember there was like it might be in one of the links that that we have up here in this document, but that I compiled,
Yeah.
and but it was like talking about like I don't remember if it was like World Economic Forum, it was like a UN guy or gal or whatever, but
Yeah.
they did say that people who
Yeah,
are
it's
not like
probably coming from both.
yeah, I mean they're holding hands together,
Yeah.
really. They said like people who are like inconvenient, well, they're going to be inconvenienced themselves,
Yeah.
So they're not. There's a lot of things that are kind of converging here.
Yeah.
People think like Trump is going to be like this tyrant, or he's going to like you have this situation with Russia and Ukraine, and China and Taiwan, World War III, and stuff happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And there's another part in the book of the Revelation. There's a lot of things I'm going to be talking. I don't know how much I'm going to bring up this, but essentially there's a thing that's in chapter 6 where there's this knight that goes about like conquering the world, and I've always heard it like said that it would be like through peace, like almost like he's like there's a lot of details you can get into it, and that's a whole other thing, but there's a lot of I don't personally think Trump is the Antichrist. He's not loved by literally everyone.
Yeah. That's
Obviously, and some people might be like, oh well, it's going to be like this big. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
yeah. And then even like the rest of the world, because I mean, I haven't been to a ton of countries, but just the general feel I get when I am out of the country is that a lot of people, if they care to follow anything going on in the U.S., and they're tuning into their TV or whatever it is, they all seem to think that like CNN is the go-to place to get like American news, and obviously CNN is gonna be like, oh, Trump, Hitler, this Trump, he's gonna destroy that, and like I've seen it just talking to people. So many of them just accept whatever CNN says about Trump, about the whole U.S. as a whole, about the two parties, and they don't question it. They just believe that, and that's how they look at us. They're like, oh, Trump is a joke. Trump is an idiot. Trump is on the lighter end, and then on the heavier end, if people who still believe he's like the most racist person in the world, he's going to be another Hitler. And it's like, well, he had 4 years to do all those things, and he didn't. So
Yeah, I mean he hasn't opened up camps. He hasn't gone about like trying to conquer the rest of the Americas. He hasn't gone at like try to annex Canada or Mexico.
yeah.
He
And then
hasn't done like all the go ahead.
yeah, and then to go back to like the 2025 thing, like I doubt anything proposed in there is as like terrible as getting rid of cash worldwide and making us all have like electronic currencies and social credit scores. Like that's huge. It's evil, but like it's one of those things where a leftist might say no, it's not happening, but if it is happening, oh, it's whatever.
Yeah, and it's always some weird like they always make some weird like exception. I mean, I mean just the idea of like I mean just in general, because I know some people might be like, oh, but in the future it's all going to be like that, and it's like the whole idea of like giving like tying your for one thing to a computer, like making all of your 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 currency digital. I mean, I know there's stuff like blockchain and Bitcoin, and I mean, I'm not in that world. I
Yeah.
don't know how
And
Monero and all this stuff
yeah, and
works.
not a ton of people are like even the people who are a lot of people who are trading that they're just trading it for profit. They don't have like a wallet, like an offline stored wallet. They're just like trading stuff on like stock exchange websites, hoping to make money. No one's like going around, paying for their gas and their breakfast and lunch with Bitcoin every single day.
Yeah, because most of the world just does not they don't trade it like that. I mean, yes, you can see like articles like, oh, this guy bought this Tesla on Craigslist or with like with Bitcoin. It's like okay, but that's like one instance that they're highlighting out of like how many transactions that are happening just the U.S. Let's not even like think about the world, just the U.S. Um. So yeah, and you have some people like Boogie. He goes and tries to get rich off of crypto, and now he goes and makes a documentary. And anyways, but yeah. So I don't think any of this stuff with Project 2025 is anywhere nearly as dystopian as anything the World Economic Forum is going to try to do, or anything like that one Handmaid's Tale. That's what it is. Handmaid's Tale. That's one.
Oh,
That's
I
one.
still see people online being like, "Oh, Trump is gonna turn America into Handmaid's Tale." It's like, oh my God, you people live in a different existence, different
Yeah,
form of reality.
I'm actually surprised I even recalled that because that's like old information in my mind. But yeah, and I mean, that's like a very specific thing, and even people, I'll just say like for myself, like some people might be like Christianity, like think about like American Christianity. You might think of like someone like Steven Anderson. Um, I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't think so, no.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I'm surprised. 'Cause he's not like. Well, anyways, he's I'll just say he's notable. Like certain like I know Alpha Omega Sin did like a video on him. Like this is like a decade ago,
Okay,
back when he was actually posting content.
yeah,
But like most Christians, even like the fundamentalists, are not that as extreme as like he is. You know,
yeah,
and like a few other like ones I can think about. Um, so
and
it's yeah. Go ahead.
another point for these leftists, like, okay, let's say we all change to electronic currencies. We all have stuff that's online and tied to whatever accounts. All you guys are afraid of Russia, like, trying to take over the world. So, what if Russia just comes and shoots an EMP over all of America? What are you going to do then?
Yeah, your money's gone. You have to go back to at that point you're going into bartering territory, which is kind of scary because bartering that's only like, well, I don't say it's only, but whenever I think about that, it's like think about like farmers or something. I'll trade
Yeah.
you like 2 horses for a cow. I don't know. I don't know if that's how the farmers market works. But yeah, so the first issue they talk about is the economy, and economy is a pretty big. It's one of the biggest issues, in U.S. politics because money is. I mean, money when you think about it is really it's almost like a measure of like how much time you really have to work almost.
Yeah.
Um, if you really think about it, um, and
And with all the inflation that's been going on, it's
yeah,
the best way to look at it is your dollar isn't going as far as it used to. Your dollar has less and less power every single day. And like I don't know, like for a lot of people the economy is like a big issue, but they'll still see that they're spending more and more every day or over all these years, and they'll still go, "Oh yeah, I'll vote for Kamala." She's going to be totally different than Biden, right?
she's not as like she's not like doesn't have dementia like he does.
That's what caused the inflation. It's his dementia. If he didn't have
It,
that,
and it's not
gas
like
would be $1.20.
it's not like she's been like VP for like the last 4 years, and it's like why isn't she taking care of it? Why isn't she like fix the issue herself
Yeah,
or
and
handlers whoever
yeah, and I know she like I had heard from other people that she called out Trump like, "Oh, you don't actually have a plan to fix the economy." And I don't remember. I think that was around the time I stopped watching. I don't remember if he had like a detailed response to that. Maybe you remember, but it's like if I was in Trump's position, and like I genuinely didn't have an economic plan, it's like one, my response would be like one, I'm still running, right? Like it's not even a sure thing, so like I'm not gonna have a fully detailed plan just yet because how many decades have we had politicians be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this and that for the economy and it's gonna be great, and then they just don't do anything, and then
Yeah.
it gets worse. So like Kamala, she could be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give free housing to black people or whatever, and somehow that's gonna magically fix the economy. And or she could be like, oh, I have a team drafting a 900-page document, and it's like, well, yeah, there's lots of those that go through Congress, and it's usually like 2 pages dedicated to the U.S. and 898 pages dedicated to giving Ukraine $60 billion.
Yeah, yeah. They include some unwanted pork, some additional pork in those, and as far as like the housing thing, I mean, I don't know if she's planning to do that because, or if she's giving it to like disadvantaged people like blacks as they tend to go for. They're not right now. I mean, I've seen some of the links that we're gonna share out here. Um, we see there's apparently like Haitians, which we're gonna get to round two here. Um, like they're getting free housing in Springfield, Ohio, or wherever else. I mean, and it's not just Ohio for what it's worth. I just saw something like today, like
Yeah,
they're
that's
also in like Pennsylvania and
and
yeah.
I just heard like on the radio the other day they're in my state now, which is one, I was not aware of that. But I'm in a pretty small town too, so I would hope I don't feel the effects of that. And two, that they're drafting up legislation for some reason to to give only specifically Haitians free birth control.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
it's very
interesting.
strange. Yeah, it's like free birth control, but only for Haitians. Like, okay,
Very oddly specific.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, yeah, Trump. As far as the economy goes, he was mostly like he said he mostly has concepts of a plan. But he does mention like he's going to raise tariffs on China, and
yeah,
cut taxes, um, like he's going. Not just in this debate, but like I know like in the last few weeks, last week, he's talked about like eliminating taxes on like overtime pay, um, and like a few other things where it's like, oh, okay, you have more of an incentive to maybe work some overtime, as opposed to like, oh, I made like $3,000, gross, but it gets like, 1,500 of it's like taxed or something.
oh yeah. The
Um,
the past couple of years, anytime I've worked overtime, like I swear, like I lose so much more of it than I did when Trump was in office.
yeah, I mean, I can say for myself, like, well, not for myself, but like certain people in my life that they've been working overtime because they're the only ones, supporting a family, and it certainly helps with like paying off bills and
Yeah,
paying off debt. Um, but yeah, Kamala also mentioned like this one particular university. I forget which one it is. And then Trump like had to correct her and say like, hey, that university actually like they looked at I told them about my plan. They're like, hey, giving them like thumbs up on it.
yeah.
So um, there's not really a whole lot to say because the one thing I will also say about this is that Kamala is she's just lying. Like, yeah, and these are like
Absolutely.
rehearsed, very rehearsed lies.
Yeah,
Like, someone gave her. It's almost as if someone gave her like
almost as if
questions.
she was wearing an earpiece.
Yeah, an earpiece. Also had the questions ahead of time, practiced them, and also one of the moderators was also like a sorority sister of hers.
Yeah,
As it turns out, turns out after the fact.
yeah.
Um.
Happened to be
So
sorority
yeah,
sister, and the other moderator was on her side, fighting her battle for her, anyways.
yeah. So you have like Trump here. He's he's a one player guy on Team Red versus like Team Green and Smash Brothers, and he's you know
Doing the 1v3.
yeah, I mean, he's putting up with it. He's doing what he can. Um, the next issue that it moves to has to do with like abortion.
Yeah.
And it's all. I mean, this issue has always been like a very emotionally charged one,
Yeah.
like, with how it gets discussed. Um, on both sides, because I mean, we're dealing with like very fundamental questions, like
Yeah.
you
Of
know,
life and
of life. Like what is life? You know, on the left, they have this absolutely cold line that a, a fetus in a mother's womb, it's just a clump of cells.
yep. I still see that, especially on Reddit. People still use that argument, like I swear, like daily, like, and it doesn't even like some people will like whether you're talking about like first month or like the fourth month, people will still use that argument. Oh, it's just a clump of cells.
Here's my honest opinion. If unless you're looking to get married to a lady is going to get married and you're actually going to have kids, keep it in your pants. It's kind of honestly what I think. Just because I mean, yeah,
And like the old Democrat line used to be they should be like rare. They should be like the exception to the rule, but they should still be legal, and then that's why they need to be legal. But now it's just like, oh, you should, get as many abortions as you need.
yeah. I mean, it's really like opening up like a
So
can of worms
yeah,
whenever they
so
did that.
they've dropped that whole mask of like, oh, that should be for emergencies only.
And
And
it's go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, so I was gonna say like my mind of it is I like it's absolutely abhorrent to me, but at the same time, I do kind of feel like if leftists, liberals, whatever, are willing to go to that extent to not raise a child, then part of me feels like they should have. I mean, they should have that right, but like exercise it like as early as possible. Don't wait till like your second trimester. I would say like
Yeah, my thing is just I understand in the United States is the United States is very much has its roots in Christianity. Well, Protestant Christianity to be exact. Um, and a lot of there's a lot of people who grew up and they maybe their parents don't teach them about things. And obviously, look, everyone gets more curious and more rebellious the older they get. But it's one of those things where it's not worth. I don't know. It's not worth it. It's not as exotic as it people might make it out to be. You know to just go and reproduce or
yeah,
engage in activity that's intended for reproduction, but you do throw in some stuff and do some stuff that doesn't exactly that prevents the reproduction from happening. So Kamala, she mentions like something about I forget some of the details, but I think she mentioned about some lady was like had like some incestuous thing happen, which I don't know. I don't know. Usually, it's stuff like that is always like very outlandish, like that.
yeah. It's like why the thing is like why are you waiting so long, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, like incest is always like a weird
It's like if it's like if that happens to you, wouldn't that like
you get the police involved because
and
it's
it's also like
probably
they've had like what they call the morning after pill that's been like available for like ages now. So it's like whether or not you think, you know, you might be pregnant, like wouldn't you just like go and like buy one the next, take one as soon as possible or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, whenever I think of something like incest, it's always something like, okay, this sounds like, some abusive father or maybe another kind of family member, um, is like forcing themselves on some poor girl, and at that point, one should dial 911, regardless. I mean, regardless of whatever the relationship is, there's some things that are just wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
it's like, yeah, like with like, yeah, I do think we should have exceptions, but again, like, why are you waiting till,
like
your,
like the 7th or 8th month.
yeah, like, why are you waiting till your quote unquote clump of cells is no longer just a clump of cells? Like,
Yeah, and
if you have the intention to get rid of this thing because you went through an experience so horrible and scarring and disgusting, you know, you think you would want to get that behind you as soon as possible.
yeah, and obviously, if we actually say some words, we'll get demonetized here.
Yeah.
Uh, what Kamala wants is she wants Roe v. Wade to have federal jurisdiction again, which goes against the whole point of United States of America, but I don't think they really care about that that aspect of things anymore. And Kamala, she has this, we kind of mentioned it before. She thinks Trump is going to usher in the was it the Republic, or is it the Empire of Gilead in The Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's like, yeah, we need a countrywide like super abortion just because of these, 0.001% of cases that might happen every year.
yeah,
Like
and
I don't know about that. Like, that's like saying, oh, we need the NSA to spy on every single person because there might be one terrorist or something. Which,
yeah,
I guess some
yeah.
people are okay with that, but
Well, yeah. I mean, they've been okay with it even after Snowden
yeah.
uh, just leaked it out. Like, man, was that
Yeah.
like 12 years ago? Man,
Yeah, and I mean, like, what I think the end goal of this is, one, like population control for sure,
absolutely.
and then two, like, just kind of, it's just one more thing to plant in our culture to kind of make open degeneracy like more and more
And also and
acceptable.
also and also a source of funds for the Democrats.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Um,
And like it, as we're talking about it, it reminded me as of when we're recording this, I don't think you know about this, but there's this VTuber named Fruit,
okay,
and yeah,
yeah,
she's
probably
she's
no.
had a bunch of like controversies over the past few years, um, and she's pretty much like always being outed for being a terrible person, but of course she's a leftist, like super SJW. So her company always has her back, and her fellow English VTubers always have her back. And one of the biggest things that's always followed her is that she cheated on her husband while he was like deployed in Afghanistan or something. And with like she cheated with like five different guys like during this time period.
Oh wow,
Yeah, so she
the
was
the
like five.
the, the Zoe Quinn of VTubers.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think it was like 2 or 3 days ago. She put out this like 90-page Google Doc. She was like, "Oh, I have this, I finally I have to relive these terrible things that I've been through in order to properly explain and defend myself." And it's just like pages and pages of like,
I mean, that's more than what I've ever done, even in like like my 3 years in college when I got my associates.
yeah, yeah, it's like 90 pages of like these alleged screenshots between her and the ex-husband, but like everything is like super duper redacted, and it all just kind of looks like it looks like it could just be from a Word document that she typed up.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
And when it gets to the part of where she cheated, she was like, well, my husband, he's being mentally abusive to me for saying that I can't practice my bodily autonomy by cheating on him. That's like basically what she said.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so like it's her bodily autonomy to like cheat on him with like all these different guys. And
But
and and that's where I feel like this is going, is women need to it's another part of quote unquote smashing the patriarchy by giving the matriarchy all these excuses and shit to like be like, oh, it's my bodily autonomy to not be faithful to you, and to be a decent person.
which kind of, you mentioned they're like, husband and wife, so I mean, like they're officially married, not just
Yeah.
like living together. So it's like, okay,
and
well,
and the worst part is like as soon as she tweeted that, like I don't even think all the people on her side like looked at any of this stuff, because like everyone's just like, oh my god, I'm so sorry for you, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, I'm so sorry you had to relive it by typing up all this stuff on your Google Doc. Oh, we're here for you, we're so glad you finally outing all this. And it's like,
like for one thing, did they read the document?
yeah,
All 90 pages.
yeah.
um
And it's like there's parts where, yeah, the guy doesn't look good, because that's the whole point of the post, is to be like, oh, he doesn't look good and woe is me. But me
okay.
personally, I'm doubting the authenticity of this, because like I said, all these screenshots look super sus.
Yeah. And if you didn't look good, then why did you one, get engaged, two, get married to the guy? And I think in one of the vows, assuming this is a standard wedding, and not just, I mean, I don't know what like a wedding in like a court
Well, actually, one of
system.
her grievances is that they didn't have like a big wedding. She said like one of her big issues with him is that they just kind of, they did the legal part of the wedding, and they didn't have like a big fancy expensive wedding or whatever.
Oh, okay. Like to get
So
all the
yeah,
family together.
yeah.
Man,
So that's another knock against him.
well, I mean, she still decided to get married. I mean, you could always have stood her ground and try to get more of her family involved, or get like a big giant crazy cake and all that. Um, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, you did all this stuff, and then it's always like they always have like a crazy like long explanation why, and it's like, okay, maybe you should go see someone like a therapist, like an actual good licensed therapist,
Yeah, and listen to them.
and one that's not like one that's like relatively normal and sane,
Yeah, one that's not
obviously.
gonna like tell you, yes, queen, you go off on your
Yeah,
ex
yeah,
husband that you cheated on.
you go, girl. You know, um, yeah. So it's one of those things where abortion is just like it's just people trying to. I mean, literally pulling out of like a decision they decided to make.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I know that was a long story to kind of make my point, but that's,
yeah,
that's the show where like I really believe things are going, especially when you have all these other women like backing her up
yeah,
for, behaving like that. It's very
and
concerning to say the least.
yeah, and really, like I said, it's all about. I mean, obviously they going to be like, you have Harris, you know, being all like, emotional about this, but she doesn't care about the individual woman,
Not at
and
all.
it's all about the Democrats keeping the abortion paper coming in, um, and like you said, depopulation, and trying to basically make, I guess, a brave new world.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've read. I mean, I've never read it. I've the book. But from what I understand, that's basically like the premise of the book is like everyone's on this like drug all the time or something
Yeah.
that like makes them feel good. Um, and I guess it's like, um, I think I read a quote like comparing 1984 and A Brave New World. and I think it was like Brave New World is what they describe as like there would be no reason to ban a book because no one's going to read a book because they're all just it's just constant orgies and like
Yeah.
24/7 other than like for the main character and the guy running things from what I understand about the
Basically just,
characters
modern day Sodom and Gomorrah type
pretty
stuff.
much. I don't know if they're going to add that crazy in the book. I should probably read it one of these days, but
But
so
that probably is the goal of some of these politicians to an extent.
and one thing I meant this is just kind of a thought that occurred to me while they were discussing things is like um in vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
Um and I don't know, like I don't know, this is touching on something else that we see it in the notes on our side, but certain things that happened 4 years ago and not we're not doing it as hard as we were 4 years ago. Um like if certain things like world impacting events.
Are you on your 6th booster yet?
Yes, basically. Um, I wonder if stuff like that like messes with people's ability to have children. Like we're not even talking like
Yeah.
abortions, but like the booster for who what is stuff like that
Now
like
that
messes with
you
people.
mentioned that, like, I didn't even think about it, but I've seen, I don't even know who they are because I don't watch them regularly, but I've seen like various videos from like various big YouTubers when they give like their update videos, be like, oh, we tried for a kid and it didn't work out, or she got pregnant and we lost the kid. And I'm like, hmm.
I mean,
Now that
and that could be a whole bunch of things,
yeah,
obviously.
but like I feel like I've seen that a lot more, and of course a lot of these big creators would have pushed getting your 7th booster, and at the time a couple years ago they would have pushed like if you don't get your shot you're a freaking idiot and you're gonna die.
Yeah. Or they end their video start ending their videos with please to get it if you can get it, you know. All I know is some people called him John. So,
Yeah,
um
and people like me clicked X on that video and never looked back.
clicked X and never looked back. Um and she also eventually, getting back onto the debate here, and we're just talking about like Harris's points. We'll get to Trump's points here. And some of my comments about what he has to say, and some of the fears people have about like Project 2025 and some other stuff. But it's she mentioned like a woman's having to work like 2 or 3 jobs like single mothers, and they can still like and my point is like they can still just barely afford things if at all, and a ruling that ruling about Roe v. Wade, which was not an abortion ban. I remember back then, articles were like, "Oh yeah, this is like a big giant abortion ban," and it's like,
Yeah, it's literally
it's
just
kind of
returning power to the states. Like that's all it is,
that's all it is. Like you guys
which
are
is the way most things should be.
yeah, and you have ladies, ladies, quote unquote. Some of them, I'm sure, um, they they're like protesting and stuff. But I mean, if a lady really wants to get an abortion for whatever reason, they still have the option. They have to go and drive into another state, and it's a lot more inconvenient. Um, you know,
And like if abortions are like that important to you, it's on your mind that much, like you should have them morning after pills at the ready. Like you should have a box of those in your purse if it's that big a deal that you would go to a protest.
yeah, um, yeah, and for as much as people like to act like Trump is like all extreme and everything, um, and tie him to Project 2025, which even before like this, he's mentioned like hey, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. Like he would say this on like Truth Social and like I don't know. He doesn't post to his like X account anymore, right? I don't think.
I think he
Because I know
actually
it got
does, just not, yeah, just like not very often.
yeah, because I know it got like reinstated, Thanks to
Yeah.
Elon, thanks to the Musk.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and for as bad as they make him out to be, Trump is making exceptions that I can tell you, growing up in in certain fundamentalist circles, and there I'll say is more of a thing of American Christianity. They would not, people, if one of the pastors I met, in one of those churches was like president, they would not have all these exceptions that Trump would,
Yeah.
he would, you replied and said, like, he has all these exceptions that they would not take into account, like, at all.
Yeah.
Like, if a woman gets, raped, to demonetize, where it's not, Trump is not as extreme as someone like Steven Anderson, and even then, like, still, it's like, he, Trump, ends up reiterating, what we just said, that he just wanted it to be a states issue, and that people on both sides of the aisle, as well, politicians and legal scholars are like, hey, this should have been like a state issue for like the past like 50 something years, and the fact that
Yeah.
he went and got it all taken care of, has been like it's been a big deal, um, and when it comes to like IVF, Trump said he's been like a leader on it, because I think from what I remember, yeah, like Harris does not. Harris was like pointing at Trump, be like, "You're not, you wouldn't allow IVF." Um, he said he's been a leader on it, and one thing he mentioned is that um, college students were said, "Hey, your loans are going to be forgiven." Um, and the thing about, I kind of make this analogy in the notes here, like, just about like, if loans, you know, and going to college, like, you have to know when to pull out. Like, I saw like how personally, and on my end, this is just a personal thing. Like, I saw how expensive college was, and this was before COVID. I'm glad I pulled out before COVID.
Yeah.
Well, universities are, I should say, are
Yeah.
how expensive those are. And I just said, you know what, this isn't worth it. I mean, maybe, if I save up a lot of money and I'm like 30 or mid 30s, early 40s, and I'm not like married or something, you know, um, I won't. I'll go back to college then and get like a bachelor's just so I can get like a better job. But you know, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, students were like taunted with like being forgiven for their loans, and they didn't get that. Brandon talked about it, and like it has to go for the courts. And even if it did happen, you know,
That would have been terrible for
yeah,
the entire country.
yeah, you think inflation's bad now? Like, I mean, I don't know when this is going to get posted up compared to like the PS5 Pro video we did. Like,
Yeah.
people start talking about like how expensive the PS5 Pro is. You if
Yes, you wait.
If Harris gets in and you had like the student loan forgiveness, like that actually went through, you're going to be wishing the PS5 was as cheap as it is $699, because it ain't going to be cheap if you have student loans being forgiven and whatever Harris
Yeah.
is going to push through that will make things even worse.
Yeah, so that's two marks against them right there. Is one, they promised something to quote unquote help everyone and they didn't do it. So why would you believe her when she says she's going to fix the economy? And then two, even if they did do it, that definitely wouldn't fix the economy. It would make things worse for everyone, and all the American people would be paying for that in their taxes.
Yeah, and we're already like what I think I remember seeing like some stuff like the interest, like we're just paying the interest on like our national debt.
Yeah.
And that doesn't, people talk about national debt, but you don't also, the other things I don't think people talk about is like how much credit card debt Americans have total, how much student loan debt, how much auto loan debt, like all this debt that they have that's not even necessarily the national, like debt that the government has because they want to just keep spending.
Yeah, and like all these things like credit card debt and all these loans or whatever, these are all personal decisions and responsibilities that individuals make. So, that college is definitely one of those things. So, like if we're gonna forgive college, why don't we just forgive everything? Why don't we forgive everyone's credit card debts and bank loans and all this other stuff?
And at that point, people are going, investors, people who are balls deep in the you know American system. They're gonna be like, well, why? What's the point of this cash then? If you're just gonna forgive it,
Yeah.
it'll just. I may as well just be Joker, in the Dark Knight, just burning it all down.
Yeah.
Man, it's already kind of a clownish. Things are already going full
Yeah.
clown world. If you want an example of like um uh clown world, let's go to the next thing they talk about. Well, as far as like how things have been going like the next 4 years, like immigration and border security and some very recent events
Yep.
that Trump shown a spotlight on. Um,
That the media doesn't want us to believe is happening at all in the slightest.
yeah, and I will say there's a lot of links in what we're going to be posting, and hopefully we'll have it more better organized whenever we go to post it. But it's not people, there's plenty of immigrants in this country who come in here legally and they do everything they're supposed to do and they integrate and assimilate to the culture.
Yep.
Um,
For example, my parents both came here legally, both worked their asses off, did things the proper, fair way. And these days, it seems a lot easier to just not even try that.
yeah, you can just do the uh well, what's the walk? Just do like a Chad walk or whatever. I was thinking about like some old meme from like way back where what was it, like the no one gives a shit walk or whatever,
Yeah.
the boss walk. I don't remember. It was some other specific thing that's like way from our like time. Um, but yeah, you can just like people are just like they're getting bussed in, or they're just walking through because they have cartels and they have like they have their fingers in certain things that let them get through. You can get over the border. Um, and then you have also a lot of other stuff like you know, th- Kamala, she mentions like trafficking of guns, uh, humans and drugs, and
It's like,
eventually, like,
where do you think that stuff comes from, Kamala?
yeah, it's not, it's good. It's like it couldn't possibly be us. Um,
Surely, if we ban guns in all of America, all the gun violence will stop.
yeah, it's not like there's illegal, ways for people to get illegal weapons. Um, and and Kamala, she goes and gives free advertising for Trump. It says like, "Hey, just go to one of his rallies." And she mentions like people like leaving it early and because they're bored, and it's like, okay, but have you seen how many people actually who actually go to Trump's rallies? And I know there's one link in here that is shows like people getting bussed into like to go to her rallies.
Yeah.
There's like an X account that or X/Twitter account that posted like a video of getting busted and it got like taken down, but then obviously because it's the internet, thankfully,
Yep.
it's mirrored and someone reposts it. And last I checked, which was like an hour ago, still up, been up, still up for like uh for like a week.
Yeah.
Um, so she pledges to put the people first, but it's like has she
Which
done
people?
anything like that in the last 4 years? And we're at these like extremes because they've made things so much worse.
Yeah, and like I know like vice VPs they don't do a ton of stuff, but when she got in office, she said, "I will handle the border. Biden, you take care of the country.
Yeah,
I will focus
she's the
on the
border
border.
czar.
Yeah. How did that work out?
Yeah. How's
And
it working out right now?
yeah, she had 4 years to focus on just one thing. She had one job, and some of you people want to give her the job of taking care of the whole country. I don't know about that one, boss.
Yep. And she mentions like Republicans are like endorsing her, and it's like, yeah, I don't know if these Republicans are what we would call Republicans who are actually like on the side
Yeah.
of Trump. Um,
Like, oh no, a Republican doesn't like Trump? Well, guess what? I don't like them.
yeah,
They're not a real Republican then.
yeah, we call them rhinos.
Yep.
And she mentioned like Afghanistan, and I'm like thinking, okay, the
Well, that was
previous
her. That was her gaff.
yeah, the withdrawal was like the worst thing ever. They left like, what is it like? I forget the exact number. It's like 85 billion or something like crazy of like
Yep.
military equipment, which is not gonna, they're gonna go and repurpose that for themselves, and they're gonna get much stronger.
Yeah, the
Um,
Taliban is pretty much like taking back control. Like we were never there.
yeah, um, yeah, we were like in, you got to think like we went over there just because of 9/11, and you know, I think I'm looking at my notes here, and
Yeah.
Kamala is just like constantly projecting, and she has like she's saying like the same thing, like let's turn the page, let's let's not do the same old tired thing that Trump Trump is doing, and um she's always doing all this. She's doing all the same stuff that she would normally do, and
Was it you who sent me the video of the female reporter interviewing the Taliban? And
um
she asked them like, "Oh, so you guys gonna do anything about women's rights?" And they just started laughing.
I don't remember if I shared that with you.
Okay.
I don't even remember the clip.
Maybe I just saw that on my recommended feed on YouTube. That was pretty
I
funny.
mean, it's not. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about rights? They don't give a crap.
I'm
To the
surprised she left
least.
that interview alive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they probably don't want to. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, as far as like stuff going, it's like we have housing shortage plan when it comes to like immigration, and we mentioned that Haitians are getting stuff over other people. Like I remember seeing like just today there was like a thing where they're interviewing this one, like this isn't so much for housing, but there's this one gun store lady who was like former. She used to work at a gun store, and uh, I guess she was like talking about like, hey, I had to sell all these guns to people, even though like what like she mentioned like this one guy who was like made a joke that his like ID was not like his. He made a joke that was like not his like actual like home address.
Yeah.
Um, Even though it's obviously a means of like being like, oh yeah, I was just joking. He's trying to get a gun, and eventually she was like, I'm not gonna sell it to you. And then he like got all mad, and then like the manager stepped in and was like, go and sell it to him, go and sell it to him, and you know, um, so you have all these problems of like they're treating the immigrants like better than like they're giving them all these like bonuses that us regular people do not.
Yeah. We have to work our asses off to
Yeah,
see anything like
yeah,
that.
and it's one of those things where obviously she's not.
It's one of those things. It should be like very self-evident. Like
She doesn't care about
you
American
see,
citizens.
yeah, like you see our supposed leader treating outsiders better than the people born and raised in this country who are struggling. Like I don't know. Like if that's who you want to vote for, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
You're beyond
unironically,
help.
you know, like, um, and she acts like, she, brings up all the usual talking points, all the usual words like extreme and diverse, um, and she acts like she grew up middle class with like her mother and her like aunt or whatever, um, and she doesn't answer like why things will be different, from like 2024 to 2028. Um,
Yeah, like it's such the most like typical politician shit ever. And like I'll talk to people who I'll consider somewhat normie, who are like they're aware that there's a very high level of BS that all politicians have to exercise to get to where they are, but they'll still like listen to everything and be like, oh, I don't know, she might do an alright job. I don't know. And
yeah,
it's
and I
like
mean, good.
I don't know. It's such like NPC programming to somehow be aware of all the BS that goes into politics and career politicians, and still just go along with all of that. Meanwhile, you have someone like Trump who is not a career politician. Not only is he saying a lot of the things that should be said, but he has shown in the past that he's willing to take action on those things. Whereas, your regular Democrat and your regular Republican will, they'll just talk and then they won't do anything that's good for the people.
They'll just give you marketing speak.
Yeah.
And if you want an example of a politician, like look no further than Harris, because she literally is like, I mean, she sucked her way up to get where she's at.
Yeah.
You know,
There's videos out there that maybe they'll make it into the edit or maybe they won't. I don't know yet. But there's videos out there of her quote unquote working her way up to the top.
yeah, and with certain revelations that have come out about a certain guy who will totally not, not kill himself in any way. There's like a post from like 2020 where she was talking about said guy, and yeah, let's see. Well, I mean, it's still developing, but they put him in. Apparently, he's going to prison, and I'm sure it won't be a guy who to conveniently, you know, suicide him or anything. And she goes and like brings up the whole, Trump was like, the whole like, I was loaned $1 million, a small loan of $1 million, and it's like that's a loan. That's not a grant.
Yeah.
I mean, if you give someone a grant
They
of $1 million, they could, literally go retire in the Bahamas or
yeah.
something.
They harp on that so much, but like yeah, he did stuff with it. And it's like that's nowhere near as bad as any of the shit you guys pull.
Yeah. I mean, he built like towers, Trump Tower, and he puts his name all over New York City. I mean, that's part of
Yeah.
how he became famous. I mean, the first time I heard of Trump was like on TV. I remember it would be on like I forget. I don't know if
The Apprentice,
well,
that show.
yeah. Well, I didn't know. I don't think it was like I knew what it was. I just remember seeing him on TV, like at like celebrity events and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and back then, I just thought he was just. I mean, it did go back to like this is like way. This is back when he was just a celebrity.
Yeah.
I just thought he was just
Just
he's
another rich guy.
just another rich guy in Hollywood. Oh, he did some stuff with like wrestling. I think I heard about like in high school because there's one guy and there's like one guy that I grew up with. He was like big into wrestling and John Cena because he was this was before Roman Reigns or whoever's
Yeah.
is a front runner on into WWE.
Yeah.
And the thing is like just because you get like a loan doesn't mean like you're scot free. I mean you got to actually do something with it, or
Yeah.
otherwise
And like
you're $1 million in the hole.
all these Democrats they always like every single one of them, like they always try to push this like, oh, like this rags to riches type thing. Like, oh, I started as nothing. My parents were homeless. I was dirt poor. I did everything on my own. And I like it's the same exact cookie cutter story every single time. And the liberals and the normies alike, they buy it, they eat it up all the time.
Well,
And
because
like,
it's a very they have like the produce Hollywood on their side. They
yeah,
have someone to go and bang on the piano and make it all sentimental, and then build up the music, and it's like this crescendo, and be
And
like,
yeah. And meanwhile, like we have, like with Trump, we have someone who will just admit, like, yeah, I was born into a wealthy family, and I got, if you want to call it a handout, let's call it a handout. But he stayed in the country, he did stuff with it, and now he's fighting for the country. Like, how many millionaires do that?
not many of them. I'm sure they probably would be like, well, if U.S. goes to crap, I mean, always Australia or New Zealand or whatever, you know, or Japan.
Yeah. Or one of
Uh,
those islands where they tend to go.
yes, yeah, other islands, someone else who totally didn't kill himself,
Yeah.
who have their names on several lists. And the thing is, like anyone who's rich is gonna. They didn't start out rich. They have to start from bottom up, bottom and work their way up. I mean, the only reason we know about Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, is because dude started drilling oil, and he ended up becoming him and Carnegie ended up becoming like one of the richest people in the late 19th century, going into the early 20th century. You know,
Yep.
um, so any person any person who becomes like something of note, they obviously started from the bottom. You know,
Yeah.
so um, and you have like Harris being like, "Oh, no true leader beats people down; they lift them up to equality." And the thing about equality, whenever they talk about equality, they're not talking about like every man was created equal under God or anything like that. The way that uh like people like someone like George Washington or Abraham Lincoln would have used that terminology back in the day. Um, it's it's really
It's
equality in suffering.
yeah. And what they're trying to sell or what they're trying to get people to buy is that is more equality of outcome rather than equal opportunity, which is that's the actual good thing that we should strive for is equal opportunity. But what they want is, I guess the word they always use now is equity. Because
Yep.
if you notice, like a lot of them, they don't even say equality anymore. They dropped that mask a while ago, and they just say equity. They want everyone,
Yeah, because they've been
yeah,
called out on the equality thing,
yeah.
and then they hide
It's like
behind a new camouflage.
yeah, it's like the softest way of like saying communism. We want everyone to get these outcomes.
Yeah, and you have all this stuff where like she brings up like January 6th with that big giant glow up,
Yeah,
glow ups. Now we have glow ups, um, and she mentions this in Charlottesville and the fine people, which Trump goes and he says if you listen for like just a few more seconds, he
yeah,
goes and talks against those neo Nazis, which I don't know. Probably we're just a bunch of like, uh, glowies, dressed up
yeah,
like,
for sure.
dressed up as Trump supporters.
Yeah,
Same with January 6th.
just happens to be a bunch of guys all in cargo pants carrying tiki torches, wearing shades. Totally not
Yeah,
sus.
yeah, very very interesting means of protest. Like like what is this? Are these the guys, the members of Los Luminados from Resident Evil 4 or something? Do we fall back and do we fall back?
Survivors having one hell of a finale.
Yeah, do we fall back in the 1800s where they're like trying to find Jack the Ripper or something in England? And
It's Charlottesville. What the hell is in Charlottesville? Nothing. Like,
there's like that was in Charlottesville. That was not the one where they took down the Robert E. Lee statue, right? Or was it a different
no,
one?
I don't think so. They were just marching around with tiki torches, and that's apparently like the most vile thing ever.
Yeah, apparently. um, and throughout all this, Trump, he's doing his, no, if it, I mean, eventually, he's doing this face where he's like smiling, like, yeah, okay, before he gets to say something.
Yeah.
And he
It's like
mentions,
if you want to talk, like let's talk. Let's talk about the whole summer of riots,
oh
or
yeah,
as you like to call it, peaceful
yeah,
protests.
peaceful protest, just summer of love. It's just going all around. We'll go and take over this section in uh Portland, I think, and call it
Yeah.
Chaz. We'll have this like big giant garden that's like poorly maintained, and we'll be good.
In
Um,
which, by the way, some black teens got shot there, but media doesn't care about that.
Wait, was that recently or?
Oh, in the Chaz area, like
Oh, okay.
there were like two legit like black teen kids like get shot in all the madness. But they'll he's not George Floyd, so
Yeah,
they don't care
yeah.
about that.
Summer of love, everyone. Um, and Trump, he goes and mentions like some of the stuff we mentioned where he's busing people into rallies, and one other thing he mentioned, and this is actually kind of a scary thing, especially in like the last like week, is World War III, and
Yeah.
this is kind of going off the debate for a little bit and kind of going to current events, but they are poking a very this is legit a scary, like, not scary scenario, because I don't know how many of you have paid attention in history, but during the Cold War, both the U.S. and Russia, although they aren't the only countries that have it, have nukes.
Yep.
And I don't know if they ever discussed this in your history, in your guys' history class, whoever's listening. Um, but there's this thing called mutually assured destruction, or MAD for short.
Hmm.
And essentially, what it is whoever fires the first shot in a nuclear war, um, that isn't like a test or something, um, like an actual shot that's going to be like going towards someone, the other person's going to respond, and I forget what the exact quote was, but oh yeah, I think I remember. It was like something like, "I do not know what weapons World War III will be fought, but I do know that World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones,"
Yeah, yeah.
or something to that effect.
Heard that quote, yeah.
And here's the thing: we're not talking about just like an atom bomb, like what we dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in at the end of World War II. We're talking about stuff that, like the Satan missile that Russia has, stuff that I forget if it's like an entire continent or an entire country. But if push comes to shove, I'm pretty sure Putin is not just gonna, be like, be like, "Hey, Zelensky, I'm gonna roll the red carpet for you. You won. You're conquering Moscow." He's not gonna do that.
Yeah.
He's gonna be like, "Well, it's either I end up conquered, or it's either me or them."
This was like early into the conflict. I didn't even like say anything wild. I posted like a video of Russell Brand on Facebook
Oh,
of
okay.
him basically just saying that the US is taking advantage of Ukraine, kind of using it as a proxy war.
Yeah.
And that was like the most offensive thing to him apparently. And like he stopped talking to me over that. And like at that point I had still never said anything bad about Ukraine. I had even like reached out to him privately and been like, "Hey, is your family okay? I'm so sorry this is happening to you and your people, whatever."
Yeah.
Um, but the mere mention that the U.S. might have an interest in this, it's like, oh no, it's too far. And then like I still have him on social media, so even though we haven't talked, like the other day, he posted this video of this other guy. I don't know if he's Russian or Ukrainian, but he's basically saying, all right, we need to stop supporting both sides and just encourage peace talks. And his response to that was like, "No, you crazy. We need what are you pro Russia or something? We need to give we need to give Ukraine even more weapons and let them destroy Russia and roll into Russia and stuff
Yeah.
like these are the like I don't know about you, but in my whole schooling, K through 12, whenever we get into anything remotely political, teachers are always like, yeah, Democrats, they're the peace lovers, they're the ones who hate racism, they're the ones who want all this good stuff, they want world peace. And it's like, ever since this Ukraine stuff, like it's like, who are the biggest warmongers around? Like it seems to be the liberals, the Democrats.
Well, I mean, it's really just a military-industrial complex because,
Yeah,
I mean, we didn't really have to go into, the Middle East, but we did it anyways, all
yeah,
because of supposed weapons of mass destruction.
yeah.
Um,
And by the way, Democrats had a vote on that too, and a lot of them supported Bush when he wanted to go in there. So
yeah,
you guys are talking about like people. I see people call Trump a warmonger. He's the only president in recent history who hasn't started any wars and has actively tried to pull us out of other countries. Like,
yeah,
I don't
and
know.
well, really, what it all harkens back to is that George Washington. I don't remember if this was like when he was I'm trying to remember if he died in office or if he like left. I don't remember. But he did say like when he was talking about like Europe, but he said basically don't get involved with Europe. They're just going to keep fighting amongst each other because back before the European Union, Europe was not like they didn't have the European Union like they do now. Back then, like Europe, they were constantly fighting with each other, for various reasons. Some of it being like religious, because like there were Protestant Reformation, and certain countries would be like, this is like a Protestant country. This is like Italy's like Catholic, and other countries that are allied with it, or they're having like a big giant resource war. Lots of like stuff was happening. It's like, okay, George Washington's like, don't get involved in that because it's just going to be a big giant mess.
Yeah,
And really, all this stuff with like NATO and stuff is kind of just a relic of post World War II and Europe being completely ruined. Well, not even just by World War II, but also World War One, really,
yeah,
because World War One, because we like put reparations on Germany, um, that led to things, getting so to where Hitler rose to power. Um, and he, it's and what ended up, and all the destruction afterwards. We were actually allied with the USSR for that war, believe it or not.
yeah,
Um, but it's not because it's more just because like, um, we both were trying to take Germany down, um, and I think maybe USSR might have helped in Japan. I don't remember. Um, you know,
yeah.
and it was
Basically, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
yeah, yeah, and so NATO and all this other stuff that were with Europe, it's not necessary anymore. I mean, the only thing is maybe Germany and all these countries. I mean, I know some of them have their own militaries. I mean, I think Germany, I think we gave them the same thing of Japan, where it's like, okay, you can have an army, but it's only for like self defense.
Yeah,
If I recall correctly, I know for Japan that's certainly the case.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Definitely heard about that for Japan.
and so it's not like, but at this point, you know, Europe, their infrastructure is all built back up. We don't NATO is not that necessary anymore. We don't need to be involved in all these countries that can defend themselves. Like even as much even like Israel and some other, like America doesn't need to
Yeah,
be helping be the world police.
yeah. The honestly, the best foreign policy, in my opinion, is to just not even have one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to have some kind of defense,
Yeah,
just because, um, but it should only be for ourselves, and
yeah.
it's
We shouldn't
part of
be
that.
asking like our own troops to lay down their lives for other countries. That's to me that just sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where having some kind of defense, part of it is having a strong border, um,
Yep.
because I mean, yes, you have people like Immortalix and his parents, um, they come in and legally, and they integrate with the culture and United States, and but then you have some of these drug lords, human traffickers, um, you know,
And they're all essentially just getting a pass. Like one of the things Harris was proposing would, basically let off these people, like let them off the hook, like entirely, pretty much.
yeah, and it's always been like a thing where it's like they're always like trying to give the criminals like a free pass, and it's like, okay, if you keep doing that, that's you're just encouraging more criminal behavior. It's not like trying to fix something wrong with like a criminal's behavior, like their brain or something. For
Like,
one thing,
yeah,
that's I don't think we can really do that right now with the current technology and what we have with medicine. And even then, like
that's a whole
the
can of worms on its own. Like the
yeah, it's a whole
whole
can of worms on its own. Because then it's like,
ethical, like,
yeah, ethically, like, because then like, okay, well, if that's the case, then why don't we give everyone that pill? It's kind of like a thought experiment. I remember
yeah,
hearing about, like, it's like some very eugenics Minority Report kind of stuff where um you keep giving people this pill, and like the standard of goodness just keeps getting more strict, and you know
yeah.
so it,
Like,
yeah,
an example, like you would think would open more and more people's eyes is like the whole retail situation where like thugs will
everything's
just
been,
come in. Yeah, thugs will just come in and steal stuff, and no one's allowed to do anything about it.
and then you have
And
Walmart's closing.
yeah, well, first they'll start locking up all their stuff, so you have to ask for it, and then of
Yeah,
course no one's gonna like buy stuff because everything's getting more expensive anyways. And then it's not convenient. You might as well just order shit online if you have to go and find one of the Walmart employees that aren't where they're supposed to be and
yeah, you have
wait.
to go and get them to like unlock something for you.
Yeah. So then even the biggest of stores, even because a lot of people will say Walmart is like a big evil corporation, but like if a big evil corporation can't survive this other evil,
Yeah, yeah, because I mean they're just gonna be bleeding too much, and they're already having to compete with like Amazon, which is like kind of the new Walmart almost,
yeah.
like online shopping.
It's like if you
Um,
want to talk about big evil corporations, like there's the biggest offender right there.
yeah, and you know Trump goes and mentioned this thing, and I think I kind of heard about it before. They're eating people's pets, and
Uh,
Kamala, she has this like wide eyed stare, and she like starts cackling, and then I remember seeing people online on certain forums and other places where they act like she's relatable because they're like, this is kind of weird to me. Like, what's this all about? And it's like, you know,
it's such like the weirdest body language. Just like whenever we're talking to each other, we always call her cackles because
yeah,
that's what she doesn't like.
Kamala,
Yeah, like normal people will laugh at something. Anytime she has a reaction to quote unquote humor, she's always cackling, like full tilt cackling.
like she's the Wicked Witch of the West or something. And throughout this whole thing as well, they're also like fact checking Trump constantly, and they never fact checked Kamala. That's
Yep.
one thing I should have mentioned earlier. Yeah, she's always getting it's the fact check, like seesaw or whatever
Yeah.
is skewed heavily towards Trump, and they're just always trying to throw that at him, but Kamala never
Yeah.
gets any of that. And with Haitians, the Haitian thing, it's obviously they're just letting people in. They're giving them more benefits than people who have lived here, work
Yeah. Like
worked their asses off and gotten to where need they've earned their way to their position, and they're just like giving Haitians their like just letting them do whatever.
yeah. Like we mentioned before, like free housing, in some cases free cars, you know, no license required kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's like we said, we'll have a whole document with all our sources and stuff, but there's tons of videos of them just like you know totally not acclimating to anything at all, just immediately getting in the car and crashing. And then
Yeah, and you
the
have to pay. You have to pay for that. By the way, you
yeah,
don't. You don't.
your insurance goes up for their shit. I guess the biggest thing, which doesn't seem like it should be like the biggest, most controversial thing to talk about, but for some reason the media is like really, really hesitant to let this one get through, is the whole stealing of the pets and the eating and or doing rituals with the pets.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know why that's the hill to die on, but the more they push back on it, the more it's like, oh, so this is true. It's not just true, it's like super true.
yeah. I mean, it's almost kind of like it's almost like Freud's theory of repression. Like the more you try to repress the id, or Jung's theory of the shadow, which is kind of the same thing as id, sort of, kind of. Anyways, it's the more you repress it, the stronger it becomes, and people are going to look into it more. You shine a bigger, a more bright and vibrant spotlight on it. Um, it's going to be more prominent, and we've talked a lot about the debate and everything, and I mean that's mostly been I would say for the most part we've kind of there's some stuff that we some other stuff we could mention about the debate. Um, we only talk about like so many issues, but just in general, they're talking about a lot of the same issues, and um, ever since the debate, we've had a lot of things. There's been a few things that have happened. Um, we've had the second. We had another assassination attempt on Trump by this one guy who was camping at the golfing place for like 12 hours apparently. Um, and there's a lot of like back and forth. It's like apparently this might be like a secret service sort of thing where they leaked the information to this other guy, and he might have been in contact with the previous assassin, or the same organization that the previous assassin was working with. And apparently this second assassin, I think it's Ryan Ralph is his name or whatever.
Yeah.
He 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 got like he didn't get like killed, like they actually like took him in alive this time, unlike the other guy, whoever it was, because there's a lot of like discussion about if it's even whatever the one kid's name was.
Oh yeah, the Crooks guy.
Yeah, Crooks, yeah,
Yeah.
Crooks.
Oh yeah,
So
and both of them, like Crooks was in like the BlackRock commercial, and then
yeah,
this guy was like very prominent in like Ukrainian pro Ukrainian media.
yeah, he was like trying to like get like send like recruits over to Ukraine, um, and he's just it's like all these like big giant red flags, and apparently Iran might have been like spying on the Trump campaign, and the FBI just reported on it, and it's like, okay, well, why didn't they report on this earlier? Um, it just seems like it seems like the corruption is coming to a head, because and
They're getting real sloppy with it too. Like,
yeah, they're getting really sloppy, and like it's almost like they're desperate, because we had the one debate with Trump and Brandon back in June or the July, I think, right when the first debate happened, and you had Brandon up there like just slurring his speech,
gosh, yeah,
like
it feels
it
like
was
fucking last week, like it happened.
yeah, it was so bad. Like I remember there was like one clip, I didn't see the whole thing, but one clip I saw was like he said something like Trump was like, I don't even know what he
Yeah,
said.
he was,
You know,
he was like,
like
I have no idea what he said. I don't even think he knows what he said.
yeah, and it's gotten so bad to where um they're like, yeah, and you're like, okay, throw Kamala out there, Biden, yeah, you're probably almost dead anyways, he's not going to get any better. So, have Kamala out there, which I will say, like even back in 2020, they were really pushing her like as being kind of like
Yeah, even back then I knew like, oh, I see where this is going. They're gonna age Biden out, and
have her
we're
be the
gonna have
first,
first
female
female
president,
Black Indian
whatever
tribal
president,
whatever president. Like,
and it's just and it's such a weird thing where it's
I wouldn't even be surprised if like they made Biden kind of play up the dementia a bit for that debate, because he's always incoherent, but he was never like that incoherent for any of his public appearances.
well, yeah, I mean, even then, there's like been like situations before. Like there's the one where he's like trying to get up this,
Yeah, yeah.
Air
He
Force One, and he's like,
falls.
and you have like some memes of like the Mario Kart, throwing like Koopa shells down him and like having him trip up on stuff. But all this to me, like all this stuff with like the assassinations, um, this just screams to me like, here's the thing about this election. If it wasn't for 2020, I would be confident that Trump is going to win. Just based on how things are going. I mean, I
Yeah.
understand like with the debate, people are kind of like 50-50 on it, but for the most part, at least in the circles I was looking at, I think generally people think Trump came out better,
Yeah.
for the most part. And
I just kind of like talked about that with my parents real quick the other night, and they were like, "Oh, I guess we'll see, who comes out on top on election night." And I'm like, we
I
had to
don't know
wait
if
like
it's
a
gonna.
whole week last time, right?
Yeah, it
And they're
was
like,
like a
"Nah,
whole.
that's not gonna happen again." I'm like, okay.
I mean, there's no pandemic this time, um, I guess, but they're still trying to push mail-in voting in certain states, and I know there's like some new stuff happening. Like I think there was like just today or yesterday, Georgia had this big like thing where they're going to do like hand counting ballots.
Yeah.
And even back then, I remember like going back to 2020, there was like a weird thing in Georgia specifically where um the boyfriend to one of Kemp's the governor of Georgia's daughters, and like some staffer he was with was driving along, and apparently he got into an accident or a bomb went off or something.
Jeez.
And there's like some theories going along that that might have been like a way to like scare him into like compliance. But it's one of those things where with the steal of 2020 and the potential that they are going to try to steal it again, which
It's so wild because like I know everyone says, oh, COVID, rare times, strange times, exceptions or whatever. But even taking COVID into account, it's not like the poll workers were like working less hours or anything. If anything,
yeah,
there was like more of them than usual, and they were working more hours. And everyone just kind of accepted, like, oh, we don't have the results tonight. And we wait the next night. Oh, we still don't have the results tonight. And everyone's just like okay with that. And somehow Russia hacked the 2016 election, but nothing strange happened in 2020. Like,
yeah, and there's certain sources that I was following back then, and people were pointing out weird stuff happening with certain other countries that might have been involved, with stuff. It's a whole thing. I mean, the fact that they've tried to take out Trump twice, the fact that they've trying to do everything, they've done everything that they've done, even just like Brandon, just like even back in 2021, 2022, like wishing like that winter of like
yeah, the
suffering on
winter of death.
people
Yeah,
or
winter of
whatever.
illness and
Yeah,
death for those of us who didn't
you didn't
take
like
the shot.
take the Vaxarino.
Yeah.
It's like Trump. Like vote for the guy who's not going to, who at least
Yeah, like
who did not do that.
how psychotic like people like to say Trump is unhinged. How psychotic is it to be like, oh yes, this giant swath of the population, you guys are gonna die because you didn't listen to me. Like, what kind of a leader, like a leader of a so-called free country, a free nation, the example, we're supposed to be setting for the rest of the world. Like that's something a dictator says. What the hell?
Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, like, the only reason you have some people online and another part, and who still are on the cackles train, whatever reason, is the only sensible reason sensible, it's
Yeah,
insensible.
sensible as you can be for.
Yeah, is they want the stuff that the Democrats are going to introduce in
Yeah.
some way. They want to be able to just sit down, play video games, consume porn, um,
Well,
live off
if
live
World
off.
War III starts, you're not gonna have video games to play. You're gonna be on the
Yeah,
front lines.
you're. I mean, you're either going to be on the front line or you're going to be in some guy's bomb shelter.
Yeah.
And some people might be like, "Oh, it's just going to be just like Fallout." It's just going to be like a big giant underground, network or
Oh, it's
whatever.
gonna be so cool. I'm gonna have the VAT system. I'm gonna kill all these radiated bugs and
And
all
like
these mutants.
scorpions and and I'm like thinking, okay, that's a video game. I don't want that to be real. I know it's kind of ridiculous, like we're taking like a video game and comparing it to real life, but like you know I don't know about you, but I'd rather it be in the future where we're in space
Yeah.
and we're and as opposed to like one where we're trying to constantly like fix things up because we're ruining. I mean,
That's
a
yeah.
nuclear like winter is gonna. I mean, at that point, we may as well. Life would not be like it is right now.
Yeah.
It would be absolutely miserable.
And
Um,
that's like the strange delusion of these unwashed neats. I'll call them.
yeah,
These people who have like never worked a day in their life and they're reading about politics online, saying this, that, and the other about Trump. And
and others like associated with
Arcadia
them.
knows exactly the group of people I'm talking about.
Yep.
But it's like how fucked up is it that like their like fantasy is Fallout and what they see as the enemy is someone like Musk who wants to take us to outer space and build colonies that we can hopefully flourish in. Like,
Yeah.
when did that become the dystopian future? Why is Fallout like the cool thing? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never played. I mean, I play a little bit of like Fallout 3, and I don't know. Those games are just way too big. I just think making a big world of just
It's also your typical Bethesda bug fest. So
yeah. I mean, eventually people are just going to beat the game by just hacking through it anyways.
yeah,
If you're trying to be sensible about time management, but it's so yeah, it's I would like to. I mean, there's like what is it like a month and like it's
like
like
a month and a
it's
half.
like a month and not even like a half really.
Yeah,
Before the moment of truth comes out, and that's gonna probably be delayed. Um,
so a month and a half.
yeah, yeah. This is one of those situations where things have not gotten any better. And I remember back in like 2019, I was working at a retail store, and uh, people like I remember I forget what it was, but people were thinking Trump was going to start World War III, but this whole Ukraine thing did not happen under his watch.
Yeah,
It happened
they
when
thought he was going to start World War III. They thought he was going to, make tensions in the Middle East worse. They thought he was going to put people in camps. They thought he was going to lead some kind of white supremacist revolution in America. None of that happened. A lot of those things did happen eventually, though, under a certain Brandon.
And one other thing I want to mention as well is that Trump is a regular human being like you and I. He's not the second coming of Christ. He's not, you know, as much. I mean, I understand there's some people in our in like kind of the circles that like people who talk about stuff like this online, they have like certain beliefs about things and certain conspiracy theories, and this all this stuff is like this other thing that's really complicated and has this whole like it has like a whole bunch of people discussing back and forth about it. Um, it's one of those things where, as much as I mean, obviously, if Trump gets in, if they let him get in,
Yeah.
um, you know,
If they let him get in, it's still an uphill battle.
yeah, it's still going to be an uphill battle, and even if the economy gets better, one thing this is just kind of like personal advice I would give to people is, because like some people will be like, COVID and all this stuff, like like video cards for gaming computers and stuff. Like they're gonna be like, oh, now I can actually afford a video card now. It's like one thing I'm gonna tell someone right now is I would say I'm of the opinion, especially after 2020 and COVID, is to not be dependent on the system as much,
Yeah.
because part of the reason they could lock people down and with COVID and stuff is because everyone's in cities or places where they go. You have the sort of Damocles over your head, and when I mean, yes, your impact on politics, which is a corrupt field just in general.
Yep.
Not even just like the national, like federal, state government, but like even just like institutions, colleges and you know other organizations associated with it, like corporations.
Yeah.
They're gonna have their own politics that they are ultimately profit motivated for them. You know, you talk, you talk about like video games going woke and stuff. Part of that is because, you know, if they would want to try to appeal to a bunch of people who aren't, you know, who are not going to likely to be the majority buyers for those games in the first place. Um, they can afford to do that because they got, BlackRock,
Yeah. Bailing them out
the,
every time.
to be their safety net. And, if, in the last few years, I mean, people talk about like, layoffs, happening like in the tech sector and video game sector. And it's like, for one thing, that always happens with every video game, unless you're like the lead project lead, like a Todd Howard or an Ed Boon or something, or Hideki Kamiya. That's pretty normal for them to like lay people off after a project's done. Unless they're retaining them for like the sequel or something. Um, but the tech sector, if I understand, is like a very it's very like they'll hire people on, they'll let people go and stuff. Um, that's all symptoms of the system, and obviously, this isn't like, oh, I'm gonna be able to like just live off the land, because I mean you're still gonna need money for things. But
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed with cities is there's like so much people in freelance work, and then when they don't get any, they start to be like super entitled to it. But it's like you chose to go into a very volatile field that
yeah,
doesn't always need you.
yeah, and video games and stuff like that, video cards, yeah, they're all nice they're things that are nice to have, but they're not necessary for life. They're not a need. um you cannot you have to be able to be adaptable. It's one of those things where when you're a teenager, you're all right, and you have all these dreams, and when you hit reality, it's like, okay, well, you have to actually be able to make money and pay for your own food and everything. And there's other issues that go into that, like obviously, food is not as healthy as it used to be. It's very hard to try to stay healthy unless you like really focus on it. um
Yeah.
I can say that from personal experience. um it's one of those things where if you're not as dependent on the system, and you're growing your own food, and you're not just buying stuff that's in like packages and has like loaded with salt, because that's how they have to preserve that stuff. Just in general, what I'm trying to say is the more focused on real freedom, and not just, oh, the gas prices are lower, man, those are all those are all beneficial. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, but they're not. But it's not. You're not going to be as free as if you're just growing your own food. Um, you're not sending your kids to public school or something. Um, or it just you have to take your life in your own hands, and that's going to require doing a lot of things that the people on the other side of the aisle who unironically support terrorists and the stuff that they promote, that the Democrat platform promotes, um, they are they are not naturally going to do that unless the subsistence that they live on is withdrawn from their lives. And a lot of that dates back to start from like the 60s, with LBJ and was it the Great Society, I think,
Yeah.
where he literally said, that, I mean, he was, because this is like back in like the civil rights era. You have Martin Luther King and um, Malcolm X and some of these other guys, trying to get like actual like equality for blacks. Because even though like you had the Civil War and everything, there were some realities that were in the United States that were not what they are today. And LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, he said that he's going to keep the blacks voting for him. He didn't use those words exactly, but he keep them voting for them. And I think one thing I've kind of observed, I don't know how, because I don't have numbers, but I think a lot of people are realizing, that all this stuff is, doesn't actually get you out of poverty. You have to actually, lift yourself out of it. And, I think people would be a lot happier with themselves and not be so depressed, if they had more control over their lives.
Yeah. Letting yourself become overly dependent on government, that's never going to end well.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like saying, "Well, I want to live with my parents for the rest of your life." I mean, unless your parents are like, you're like an only child, and your parents are like sickly, or they're like, getting old to where they don't, they're like old to where they don't need to be like in a nursing home or whatever. That's obviously someone's own choice.
Yeah. And even then, they're not going to live longer than you are, so you can't
naturally
even live
anyways.
off of them for the rest of your life, anyways.
Yeah, and because obviously someone could die from like a car accident, and that's unfortunate. But it's you can take control of your life, and you don't have to. You're not stuff doesn't just happen to you. Just you have more you have more autonomy and control than you think, and it's a lot easier to exercise that when you don't have a government boot stomping on you, and the housing market isn't inflated into price.
Yep.
Because demand is like way out there and the supply is like lower, and stuff like the whole Haitian thing is not helping either.